I think we're here. Good afternoon, everyone. If you're watching on LinkedIn, hello, or YouTube, hello. And I think I'm meant to be going into my Facebook group, but I'm not 100% certain that's going to work. So if you're in the group, hello. Um, I'm really excited about this conversation actually because it's probably one of the things that I know in my own life, my own career, and my own business has probably been one of my biggest stumbling blocks, and that is my relationship with money. And I think a lot of people have a relationship with money that isn't always the most efficient, effective, comforting. So I'm really excited actually to be joined today by Kim Uzzell, who is a financial well-being and money trauma coach with a 30-year career in investment management behind her. Kim's got a particular interest, though, in helping us to become financially independent, not codependent, by gaining confidence around our money and being able to build future wealth, so that we all have our money working harder for us and giving us more choices. And I have to say, I think this is the bit that I'm most excited about, is the choice bit. You know, we tend to think of money as being a thing, but it's just a thing that gives us the means to something else. So I'm really excited to look at that. So Kim's really keen for us to know that this isn't all about having thousands of pounds to invest, picking the right investment. It's just as much, if not more, about stopping us from self-sabotaging those mind monkeys that go on our head. It's about eliminating those financial habits, those probably not so good habits that we've inherited from parents, from grandparents. I relate so much to this, Kim, because, you know, I think our background, whether we had a wealthy background or a not wealthy background, gives us patterns of stories that we tell us. I'm really excited to explore that. So it's about getting good money strategies in place. So most importantly, Kim, I think you say you believe it's about having easier and more comfortable conversations about money. And there's definitely a fear, I think, around talking about money openly. So first of all, Kim, welcome to this live stream. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me kick off with a question for you, if I can. Why is financial stress such an unaddressed factor in performance and our health? Big question to start us off with.
Oh, yeah, a big one. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. And, this is a really important conversation because money is one of those areas that we still don't feel comfortable talking about. And yet it affects each and every one of us every single day of our lives. We earn it, we spend it, we need it, we want it. And yet we are not encouraged to talk about it at home, at work, with our friends. It's still a bit of a taboo topic. And that means that when it's going well, we don't feel that we're able to celebrate it. So that's not so much of a problem. But when it's not going so well, or when we don't understand it, we feel as though we've got to hold on to this secret, that it's not for sharing, it's not for general consumption. And whenever we start to hold on to something that's bothering us or worrying us or concerning us in some way, it starts to follow us around and it interferes with every element of our life. And it becomes stressful because the problem doesn't go away, or the misunderstanding or the lack of awareness doesn't go away. And it just builds up layer by layer by layer. And instead of being something that we can deal with, talk about, ask questions, get the paperwork done, sort it all out, it becomes a stressful matter. It becomes the last thing we think about before we go to sleep, the first thing we think about when we wake up, follows us to work, follows us around the house, leads us to get tetchy, irritable, and that becomes a problem. But still, we don't talk about it. We just try and deal with it, or we just try and hide it and hope it goes away.
Why do we do that? Is it shame? Is it? I mean, for me, I know that I have to say my relationship with money over the years has not been great. I am one of those. I'm like an ostrich when it comes to anything financial. I bury my head and hope it'll go away, and trust that my other half, because he doesn't have the same money mindset as me, will just deal with it. Which has been great for most of my life till I started my business, at which point he said, no, if you're a big enough girl to have your own business, then you're a big enough girl to do your own finances. So get on with it, which I've had to do, but it's been challenging. So why won't we talk about it? What is it that sits at the core of this? And are we even aware that money is really the at the core of whatever it is we're feeling stressed about?
I think we are aware that money is a big deal because it is such a big part of our life. If we are worried about whether we can pay the bills, that's not something that you just think about for a couple of minutes each day. If we're worried about, how we're going to tell our other half that we've maxed out our credit card and can't afford the Christmas presents, that's not something that is just there in the background quite happily ticking along. It's something that we are carrying a fear of being found out, a fear of how we're going to be perceived when we start talking about it, or a fear of judgment, or maybe we're fearing that if we get found out, or if we have this conversation, that our relationship may end, or our job may end, or our clients may think that we're not professional enough. So there is that fear that stops us from saying what we need to say, or exploring what we need to explore. And that fear comes from this wider societal sort of and generational expectation around money. You just don't talk about it. It's not there to be spoken about. It's just there to be dealt with. And yet nobody teaches us how to deal with money when we're at school, or when we start out in our careers, or when we are building businesses. So, we've got this inbuilt thing, but it comes from so many places. If you've ever been handed pocket money by an aunt or a grandparent, and it's sort of given to you with that little knowing wink of it's our secret, that's done with the best of intentions. They want to give you a gift, but it comes with this attachment. It's our secret. Or if your mum's bailed you out and she says, don't tell your father, or if your father's bailed you out and he says, don't tell your mother, it's between us. Now, all of those things may be in the moment really positive, but we carry then this expectation that you don't mention it. So if we think back to how many times over our lifetime we've had these little comments that have been made with the best of intentions, but they result in you feeling that you can't say anything. Don't tell your mum, don't tell your dad. It's our secret between you and me. And they're the things that still apply to us 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, that we've got this thing and we mustn't talk about it. We mustn't tell mum, we mustn't tell dad, we mustn't tell our other half. Maybe we're not even admitting it to ourselves. So it comes from a deep background.
Yeah, I get that. I was chatting to my coach yesterday, and we were talking about money, mainly because I knew we were going to be doing this live, and it came up in conversation. And I had a memory, a little bit like my dad's voice. My dad's been dead for many years now, but it was like there's a voice of my dad in my head when we were talking, and I could hear him say, when it's gone, it's gone. When it's gone, it's gone. And that made me think, gosh, that's such a scarcity mindset, isn't it? Like, if you spend it, when it's gone, it's gone. Like, there's no more to come. And I think for me, the mindset, I've tried to explore this. I haven't really got to the root of what my true money mindset is all about, and where it's, where the blocks are. But it's definitely about scarcity and shame. I did grow up in quite a poor background on the outskirts of Newcastle, and money was scarce. It really was scarce, but we had the mindset that it was scarce as well. And savings, it's very hard to get into the frame of mind of saving when there's barely enough money to see you to the end of the month. What are your thoughts on? So I guess the question here is, we can talk about the practicalities of investing, saving, and I would like to touch, if we can, in a little while, on the perception of saving and investment, as in you have to be wealthy to be able to invest, and that's not your thoughts on this at all, is it? So how do we balance the practicalities, the kind of the theory of managing money, with the emotions surrounding managing your money? Because you're right, we're not taught either of these things in school. But even if we've got the practical advice, if the mindset isn't in the right place to work with that advice, we're not going to make the habit changes we need. Right, that was a very long-winded way of asking you, how do we balance the theory with the practice, I guess?
Okay, so going back to your story of growing up in that place of scarcity, that applies to so many people, whether that's just because of the time that we were growing up. So, we grew up in the 70s. It was tough for pretty much everybody, unless you were incredibly wealthy. But even the incredibly wealthy still had to deal with some of the practical stuff, like the 3-day week and the electricity going off and that sort of thing. So some of our messages and our stories come from the environment that we all lived in, and we're still taking some of those things with us, and we're remembering those messages from our mum, not born in a barn, shut the door, turn, all of these things that we just heard and we took in, but everybody took them in. Is how we've distorted them and retained them. That is important there. But also we will have had things that will have applied to some of us. If we had free school lunches, for example, that back in the day was something that we were often embarrassed about. Or if our parents got divorced, nowadays it's pretty normal. But I remember at school it being a big deal if your parents split up. Yeah. But the alternative to that was that actually you were in a family that was unhappy. Nowadays we would say, well, if you're unhappy, get out of it. But back then there was this other set of stigma and taboos around a lot of things that we were growing up with. So if you've had that as part of your upbringing, whether in a small part or a major part, then again that can stay with you. And often we get told, or we think that money is not for people like us. If we've been brought up with living hand to mouth, or being happy-go-lucky, or whatever the phrase is that you wanted to attach to it, or that was attached to it at the time, it often comes with that feeling that you're never going to have any more. So if you believe from an early age that you're never going to have any more, or that you've got to rely on what other people give you, then that's quite difficult to pull yourself out of, unless you make that conscious decision to do the work to pull yourself out of it. So even when you make it in business or make it in your career, there's still that little voice on your shoulder going, yes, but. So we need to listen to that little voice, not so that we can, suffer the nagging forevermore, but to say, yes, I hear you, and I respect where you're coming from, and I understand now that actually it wasn't that we were just no good with money, but we were subject to the things within our economy, within our environment, within our family makeup that nowadays would be seen very differently. So how can I respect that and understand that, and then change my perception of it so that I can change my relationship with money? And sometimes we think we are no good with money because we haven't had a big, well-paid job or a big investment portfolio. But I would, say to any housewife of the time, who paid the bills? Who made sure that the money that came into the household was enough, maybe by the skin of your teeth sometimes, but it was enough to feed, clothe, get birthday presents, make Christmas fun for everybody? Who made sure that that money was always where it needed to be? It may have been tough, it may have been a stretch, but the fact that you achieved it, even if it was by the skin of your teeth, means that it's not that you're no good with money, you're actually freaking awesome with money. You just don't realize it because nobody is telling you that that is a fabulous skill set to have.
Is there a difference, do you think, between, apologies Kim, I think there's just a slight delay there. Is there a gender difference here? I have, openly talked about the fact that I abdicated a huge amount of the financial burden of managing our money to my husband. Is it, so that's my experience. That's how it was done in my mum and, with my mum and dad. Dad managed the money. It was just the way it always was. Is there a gender difference? Do you think we think about money differently?
We absolutely do for a couple of reasons. One is that you've just mentioned. When we were growing up, so I know that I'm speaking to people of a certain age in the prime of their lives, but our mums weren't able to be financially independent in the way that we expect our children to be, our daughters and our granddaughters to be. So I was born in 1970. My mum had come from an environment where money wasn't scarce. She came from a farming family, and my grandmother was actually a head teacher, so had an independent income, and so there were lots of great things within the home that gave her a good grounding. However, my mum wouldn't have been able to go and get a bank account of her own until just before I was born, and of course she
I
wouldn't have been
heard
able to go
about
and get
this.
a mortgage or a credit card or a loan to become independent and do things that she wanted or needed to do until quite a few years after I was born. So it's not that they are not good with money, it's that they weren't able to do the things that we now take for granted. We assume that as independent women, we can go and get a loan to buy a car or put it on PCP or get a credit card or whatever we want to do, need to do, get a mortgage, get a buy-to-let mortgage so we can become landlords, get a business loan. It's easy. We can do that on our own. We do not need a man to do that for us. But back then, it wasn't a choice. If you wanted to have that expansion, that relationship with money that involved borrowing to leverage or borrowing to get by or borrowing to give yourself better choices in life, then you had to have somebody else sign that document with you. So what does that tell you, and what then does that mean that you can teach your children about? If you've grown up believing that money isn't for women, growth and expansion and businesses isn't generally for women. We used to see, names of businesses, so and so and son. There was never so and so and daughter.
Mm.
We used to see estates being passed, especially farming estates or estates with property would be passed to the eldest boy or to the male children. The women the girls were treated very differently, and that's a historical thing that we've seen, whether that's working classes, middle classes, or upper classes, that the difference between men and women until pretty recently in our lifetimes has forced those differences. But also we have the nurture side of us. We have got opportunities to break glass ceilings, build businesses, earn more in our career, and we've fought tooth and nail to have those opportunities, which have been great. But of course, we still have some natural differences that can't be ignored. And I may be going against the grain where I say that I don't believe we can have it all, because I think there are things that we need to be very aware of, that we need to honour and respect. And if I want to be a mother, which I chose to be, and have a career, that came with some adjustments and some sacrifices, because actually I can't be 100% an amazing stockbroker in a full-time 9 to 5 and 100% amazing mum. I've got to navigate and compromise and sacrifice. And so having it all, in my opinion, as somebody who tried to have it all, doesn't really exist. But in doing that, what we choose to do is to sacrifice some of our income so that we can pay a childminder or a nanny so that we can carry on with our work, or we choose to sacrifice some of our career so that we can spend more time at home. And the pace of technology moves so quickly that if you have a year off as maternity leave, or if you have a couple of years because you're having 2 or 3 children, then you may have a lot of catching up to do in the workplace. That's tough, that's hard, and you may choose that actually you don't want to do that right now. You want to focus on being that mum. That all comes with a financial cost. it also means that when we get money in, our first thought is, how can we benefit other people? The nurture side of us is often, not always, often to put other people's needs before ours. And that will include our children, it will include our parents, it will include our friends. And we put ourselves to the bottom of the pile when it comes to our own money. So we can be working harder, breaking those glass ceilings, building those businesses, and still not having any money left at the end of the day, either for practical reasons because we need the childcare help, or for emotional reasons because we feel that we need to help other people first.
So are we saying then that this really it doesn't affect men in the same way?
It does affect men, but it's different. Men have, again, going back generations, going back to caveman days, men were the hunter-gatherers. Men were there to provide. Men were there to go out and do the hard work and bring the money home. On a Thursday, the brown envelope would appear with the salary for the week, and that was the pressure that was put on men to provide. So then you have a completely different set of emotions. If a man is unable to provide, he then feels a different potential level of shame or fear of failure, because historically, generationally, for hundreds or thousands of years, men were expected to do what they needed to do. And now here I am in 2023 or 2024, and I can't do what's expected of me. Am I lesser in some way? That's then becoming a bigger problem, because again, men don't talk about how they feel, the stresses. They don't feel that they can open up. They may end up then putting a brave face on it, making out everything's okay. And we all know that that's not a sustainable form of well-being. And often that then comes with trying to prove that we're okay by spending money. One of my clients will tell his story quite openly about how when he went through his divorce and then he wasn't able to provide and not that sort of thing, or he felt that he wasn't able to provide, he would cover it up by spending, so that he could put happy photos on social media, so that everybody would think that he was living the life of Riley and that everything was well. But all of that was being paid on his credit card. And when that credit card got maxed out, he'd just go and get another one. So sometimes, we can see these very different patterns, but they all have the same issues around, that we don't open up and talk about them. So we don't deal with them.
So status obviously is quite a big pressure, I guess, for men and women. But that what I think I'm hearing from you is, with the expectation on men to provide. And they get that from a very young age. The messaging comes in at a very young age, doesn't it? So let's look at the workplace if we can, because I want this. When we arranged to have this conversation, I had two audiences in mind, I guess. Really, one was from an employer perspective, how this financial lack of confidence, the financial relationships that people have, how it impacts their performance in the workplace, and the impact on businesses. And the other audience was really looking at people who are in that wellness space, who are maybe coaching or supporting people around their well-being, who may not be aware of the underlying impact of financial stresses, or potentially the relationship that somebody has with money that are creating those stresses. And when we were having our sort of pre-conversations before getting on this live stream, we talked about a culture of fear around money and talking about money in the workplace. Can you talk me through what you mean by a culture of fear in the workplace?
So again, there are many, many layers to this. From an employee point of view, it may be that you're just about managing to get through each month, or that you've been working really hard to save up so that your car can get through its MOT or whatever is coming up, and you think you're just about there. 2/3 of all employees are living payday to payday. So there's a huge number of people who really do have to be quite careful. And then you're just about getting towards that payday, thinking, I've made it. I'm almost there. The end is in sight. And then somebody comes around with a request for sponsorship, for their race for life, or a marathon or a skydive, or or a something, and that actually that fiver that you are expected, or you believe you're expected to put into the pot, is now going to throw you. And it's only a fiver. So we hear this little voice, it's only a fiver, but actually that can really throw you. And it can be something that, if that happens 2 or 3 times, again, that pattern of behavior, that feeling, you see the request pop up into your inbox, or you see the envelope on your desk with somebody's leaving card and a request for everybody to pop in a tenner, and your heart sinks. And so you end up having this little fear of what's coming into your inbox, what's going, how do you avoid, how do you make the excuse, how do you do this without losing face? Or do you put that money in, make that contribution, and then you worry even more about how you're going to get through to the end of the month? So it can be something simple like that. It can be that if you are working within a professional environment where you look after other people's money, or you look after the business's money. So I was a stockbroker, but it might be that you're an accountant or a lawyer or a finance manager or payroll manager. You're in some way involved with looking after money, and you do that really, really, really well, but you've got this very sort of different set of circumstances at home. Maybe at home you're still living payday to payday, or you're worried about how you're going to pay the bills, or you've overextended yourself on the credit card, or you've got a spending habit that you can't control. And then that fear of, it's not just opening up about where you're at with your financial relationship to get that support, but it's, what if they then think that I'm not trusted, that I can't be around money, that I have that fear then of if I open up, would I lose my job? What will my clients think? What will my boss think? And that's very definitely a situation that I was in, for many years in my career, that I was looking after other people's money a lot better than I could look after my own. And there was always that fear of, what if I got found out? And actually, since I've left that environment, and I talk about this openly, I have so many people coming into my inbox saying, thank goodness, I thought it was just me. But we still have this fear of putting it out there, that so many people have that. And there's also the fact that in many businesses, in many corporate environments, it's actually a disciplinary offence to talk about salaries and bonuses and levels of payment. So
this surprised me so much when you told me this. And interestingly, good old TikTok, bizarrely how these serendipities happen, but I was scrolling through the For You page on TikTok, and there's a couple of people that talk about toxic workplaces. And this very issue has come up on my TikTok probably half a dozen times since our conversation last week, where it's been disclosed at a team event. They've been out having a drink or whatever in the evening with their team, and the discussion around it, a lack of parity between pay for people doing the same job with similar experience and similar outputs. And when they've brought it up with their manager and said, I was having this conversation and I don't understand why I'm being paid $6,000 a year less than such and such, when actually my targets are, I'm exceeding my targets. I'm doing all of the things right, and they're shut down. You shouldn't be discussing this. And I had no idea this was a thing. So talk me more about this, because I wonder if a lot of people don't realise that this could be a disciplinary offence, and is that even legal?
I'm not sure about the legalities. I have to speak to a lawyer about that, but I certainly know that it's been something that is very common throughout the corporate world, and I know that I've certainly been aware of it, but maybe that's because this is the sort of job that I do. But it's definitely not something that's unusual. So if we are told you can't talk about money, again, that's add that to all of those things from your childhood. Don't tell your mum, don't tell your dad, it's our secret. It just reinforces this general feeling that money is not to be talked about. So how do you open up about it if you're struggling, or if you're worried, or if you've got questions? Because the general feeling is you don't talk about it. But on a salary basis, it doesn't matter what gender you are, what age you are. How do you know if you're being paid fairly? How do you know whether or not, there's a real case for you to take take it up with HR, or with your line manager, or to go and get another job? How do you know that you're being paid appropriately, or that there's equity? We're talking about diversity and equality and inclusion, and all of these great things that we're bringing into the workplace. But how do you actually know if it's fair, if you're not allowed to ask the question? If by asking the question you then fear for your job, you fear that you're going to get called in and disciplined in some way. That might be a first warning, it might be a final written warning. You just don't want to go there, so you don't ask the question. What is that encouraging in terms of our general financial confidence? And then if we do find out, and we then feel we can't do anything with that information, but we know that the guy on the next desk to us is getting £6,000 a year more than I am for the same amount, and yet I hit my targets. What can I do about that? I can't talk about it. I don't want to get him into trouble. But actually, am I being paid less because that they think less of me? Again, that then on a well-being and mindset basis, it pushes us down, because we
And it
don't
doesn't
know
do
what
much
we
for
can do
morale
about
either,
it.
does it? Are you
No.
going to perform so well if you feel like you're not being valued? It just doesn't make sense.
Or do you just hop off and look for another job because you're now really not, and you don't feel that you're worth, or they don't think that you're worth what the other guy is being paid, or whatever it might be. So you go. And even more frustrating then is, so often we see it that when people make that decision to leave, then there's an offer. Oh, well, we'll pay you this much to stay. It's like, well, if you'd paid me that much in the first place, I would never have looked to leave. But why are you only offering me that money now, when I've threatened to leave, or I've got this other job that I've been offered? Why is it only now? Why was I not good enough for you to pay me that before? And so there's lots of things going on within workplaces. It's never going to be perfect, and it's never going to be completely equal, and there are things that we need to be aware of. But just making it a complete, don't talk about it, doesn't do us any good in any area of our finances. And again, how can we teach our children if we're not allowed to talk about it ourselves?
So what can employers do to support financial well-being and improve employee performance? What sort of tips would you have?
Well, whether it's thinking about a different or better way of doing the collections for people's birthdays, leaving, and that sort of thing, so that if people are struggling, they don't feel that they're putting themselves sort of opening themselves up to fear or embarrassment around these things. But bringing in employers have huge well-being offerings that they're putting in place for their staff. They're really making those moves. They've got menopause champions, they've got DEI workshops going on. We celebrate Pride Month. These are things that just a few short years ago we would never have done. And all of these things are coming through and form part of our working week, our working year. But we're not talking about money in all of those things. So employees are under pressure. They're under pressure because there's changes in the external environment, but they're under pressure because nobody is supporting them in how to actually manage their money. So if an employer can support that, provide that as part of the wellbeing offering, first of all, if you've got a problem, how do you get support? How do you get help? How can you create a safe culture where you can talk about money? So that if somebody is struggling, they're not dealing with it on their own. How can you include financial well-being for your new starters, so that when they come into the business, they learn how, what does the things on their payslip actually mean? How do they know whether they're being paid the right amount, taking into consideration the student loan that they've got to repay, their tax codes, those sort of things? Who's teaching them? All the way through somebody's career, from the moment you start to the time that you retire, there's an element of support that's needed, that's often not being given. Just having a 10-minute conversation with the pensions chap once a year doesn't cut it. So we need to be improving that, but to make it this culture where it's safe to talk. We increased the awareness of mental health. It's becoming more, not easier, but we're opening up subjects like the menopause that previously we wouldn't have talked about. We'd have pushed under the carpet, but we are talking about these things because they affect everybody. Money is one of those things that we need to be talking about more at work. We spend so much time at work. If we're going to work with money stressors, if we are living payday to payday, then that's affecting our general state of mind and our focus. And that means we're not focusing on the job in hand. We're more likely to make mistakes. We might not be sleeping well, so we'll be a bit tetchy, irritable. We might snap at a colleague, snap at a client. None of those things are any good for anybody. So we need to be working out ways of how we can make those changes from the day one to the last day at work.
Yeah.
So and not have this fear culture.
I think as well, something you said earlier, about the leaving present. This time of year in particular must be challenging, because I think quite often, there's Christmas parties and secret Santas and all of these other expectations that you will attend, that you will participate, and if you don't, you're somehow not a team player. There's that huge amount of pressure. I mean, it's there all year round, but I would have thought more so than ever at this time of year, when Christmas for many people is a very stressful time of year anyway, and then you've got the added burden of all these different events that your career is likely to be affected by if you aren't seen to be doing, being part of the team. Which is challenging. Where do you think wellness professionals, perhaps wellness coaches, wellness practitioners coming into the workplace, how can they better understand the underlying sort of financial implications of what they're delivering? I'm thinking maybe you've got people going in and talking about mindfulness and stress management and better nutrition and all of these great wellness initiatives that businesses are putting in place now. But do we need to be, as wellness practitioners, better informed about the impact of the relationship with money?
Yes. I really believe so, because if you've got 70% of the workforce going to work with money worries, 2/3 living payday to payday, we can pull any number of statistics, but one of the hardest hitting stats that I see is that every year in the UK, 400,000 people every year just in the UK consider taking their own lives because of money worries. So on a wellness, whichever element of well-being you come at, you surely can't ignore that. And the offerings that we're seeing around well-being, and there's loads and loads of different ways now. It's not just a stress management day anymore. It's lots of different things. But are they able to tackle what's really causing the stress? If they're not, then what they're doing is great, but that person's still going home to this worry, to this, how am I going to survive? How am I going to get through? How am I going to have that conversation that I need to have with my partner? How do I tell the children that actually this year Santa's on a bit of an economy, spree? The well-being stuff, whether that's team building days, Lego play, pizza on a Friday, stress management, mindfulness, breathing, they're all great. But if they're not dealing with the thing that's actually causing the stress, and remember, money will cause stress in relationships. Relationship breakdowns will cause stress in finances. Having a child brings another financial pressure. It's a great thing to celebrate, but it costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to bring up a child. Even bringing a puppy into the household, lovely thing, but it's now a commitment. What if you then can't maintain that financial commitment, but now worrying about it? There are lots and lots of things that are at that core, that heart of a person, and they overlap into so many other areas of life. What if you want to progress in your career, but you can't afford to take the exams or the qualifications that you might need, or that because you're stressed about money, the environment at home is not happy because you're worried and you're arguing about money, so you haven't got the quiet space to study for that qualification to get you, above your career. It's at the heart of so much. So it frustrates me hugely that it's being overlooked, or that people aren't aware that it actually needs to be included. So if you're a wellness professional, and I know I work with some great wellbeing organizations who provide their expertise, and then they bring me in to provide the financial wellbeing side of it, because we're all good at what we're good at, and we can't be good at everything, much as we'd like to be. So work with the people who are in their zone of genius, so that combined you can bring in a fabulous offering. So then if you're dealing with the thing that's causing the stress, and you're giving the tools and the skills to be able to manage money, understand money, talk about money easier, then the rest of that well-being stuff is going to be so much more effective. Otherwise, it could be a wasted cost.
Yeah, and it that was the reason for the title of this live stream. Don't put a sticking plaster on a broken bone. Expand on what we mean by that. What are the sticking plasters that you see employers and businesses doing to tick the well-being box that isn't dealing with the broken bone underneath, the financial stress?
So sometimes we just get the response, yeah, our well-being is being sorted. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that you've allocated your budget beautifully, but have you got somebody talking about money? Have you got somebody helping your employees make the most of their salary, so that they don't feel that stress at work, and they don't feel the need to go and get another job elsewhere? They can manage their money better, make it work harder for them, and you don't feel pressured to give them a pay rise. They don't feel the need to go elsewhere. That's one thing. Is anybody doing that? The general well-being people probably aren't, and maybe that's because they don't know how to do that themselves. We've just had this conversation about going into business, and all of a sudden you've got to do money stuff. What if we don't know how to do that? Who's teaching the wellness people about money? So we have that aspect. I know of businesses, only 11%, according to the CIPD, only about 11% of businesses actively include financial well-being within their well-being offering. So that means there's an awful lot of people going to work where there's no wellbeing provision, and just having a debt helpline on the intranet, or pinned to the notice board in the staff room, is not enough. By that point, it's almost too late. We need to do things at the beginning. Like I say, educate from the very first day people start work. Otherwise, again, lack of education means that we don't know what we don't know, so we make mistakes, and then how do we know how to learn from them? So just putting that helpline, or saying, yeah, there's an employee assistance program out there, go and use it, is not enough. And I've heard of places where when staff have been struggling, they've actually been given a sub on their wages. So, an advance will pay you early. Well, anybody who is being paid early in December knows that being paid early does not solve the problem, because you've already now got to make that, what you get for that pay, last longer, or you're getting less now in the next pay packet. So if you were already squeezed last time, got into a problem and needed that sub, now you're even further back when the next pay packet comes in, so even more stress. So yeah, in the moment, it might seem that you're being very supportive. That sticking plaster is there. The help is there for you. We're very open to supporting you. But actually, the result is not a healing one. It's a temporary fix. And if you've broken your leg, popping an elastoplast on is not going to help the healing. So in the same way, if you've got money worries, then having a pizza on a Friday is not going to really help what needs to be helped, unless you are having a pizza on a Friday while you've got a financial well-being person helping your teams navigate their money stuff better.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So let's get to some practical tips. I know you've given a couple already. What would be a top tip for an individual who maybe doesn't feel like they have a huge amount of spare cash, disposable income to invest? What would be a best tip to get them started on sort of financial a financial strategy for growth, I guess?
So first of all, we often assume that we can't afford to do things, or that we haven't got any money. And for some people, yes, that will be the case. I fully appreciate that. But for so many others, we just don't know what we're spending. We're not really paying attention. We can't tell you how much our bills are. We can't tell you how much we really spent in the supermarket. We think that we spent, X amount on Friday, but we forget all of the little top-up shops, and they're just nipping into the market and just picking up something when we're filling up the car with fuel. They're the things that are the little things we don't pay attention to. We don't register, but they are money that is leaving our bank account. So, for starters, I would always say know exactly what you're spending and what you're wasting. So for a couple of weeks, just get yourself a little diary or something, a little notebook, or log things in your phone. Or if you love spreadsheets, create a spreadsheet and just write down every single penny that you are spending and see where you're actually not spending money wisely. And even if that's just a few pounds here and there, oh, it's only 80p for a bar of chocolate, or it's only, a couple of quid, it's only, all of those things add up. And that money, unless you're really thoroughly getting the benefit from those transactions along the way, you could use that money to do something better with. So you could use that money to pay off your credit card. You could use that money to pop into a savings account for next year's Christmas presents, so that next year, when it comes to putting 10 quid in for a Secret Santa, the money's there. Or you could pop it into your longer term investing. So knowing what you've really got and paying attention to what you're really spending sounds a bit basic, but most people don't do it because it's too easy. We don't get cash out anymore. We don't need to write a check anymore. You just tap and go, or you wave your debit card, or you press click here to buy now. You don't even have to put your card details in. They're all stored everywhere, so you don't register. So take a step back, go back to basics.
It's interesting though, because actually I found that technology and being cashless has really helped me to track. So because you used to get a tenner out the hole in the wall, buy something for a couple of quid, and then you're left with a whole lot of change that just dwindles away. Now, because I do everything on my phone, I tap it and it's instant. For me, I get instant feedback. So I bank with Starling. It comes up straight away on my Starling app, so I can see exactly what I've spent. And I have like little. Well, the beauty of Starling Bank, and I'm not sponsored for Starling, but it has made a difference for me. And having ADHD, actually, the idea of keeping a notebook, whilst I recognise the benefits, I don't have the discipline to do that. I know I don't. But because with Starling as well, you have spaces, so you can move money into saving spaces. So you could have one for unexpected work expenses and just shove a quid or so in every time you get paid. But you can't spend from that space without physically going in and moving money out of the space and into the main account. And that for me gives me a moment of pause, a moment of breathing space to say, actually, do I really want to buy this? If I buy this blouse for 80 quid and I see 80 quid coming out of that space, and that space is only going to have 30 quid left in it, do I really want to do that? And it's, for me, so technology has been massive in helping me to manage my money better. But I think, would you agree, it's kind of finding what works for you?
Yeah, we need to go back a step though, because with the technology, and I've got a Starling account, and I love the spaces, but what we need to do is to see, okay, how much money can I put into those spaces? What do I need to put in? What can I afford to put in? Because quite often what we end up doing is we forget those spends that are driven by not a spreadsheet and how much we can afford, but a stressful day, a tired day, trying to fill a void. If our kids have gone off to our ex for the weekend, and then we're feeling a little bit low, do we start spending online to fill that gap? And those emotional spends, we don't then recognize in the same way, because we're being driven by emotion. So if we're not actually allocating money within our budget for emotional spends, for stressful eating or whatever it might be that we're doing, if we don't recognize that first, then what we're going to do is we're going to get our pay, we're going to put X amount in our spaces for different things, and we're going to be feeling really good with ourselves because we've done the sensible money management grown up adulting thing. And then 2 weeks in, we're going to wonder where it's all gone wrong, because we have to keep raiding those spaces because we haven't actually done the first bit first. So it really is going back to basics and having that real, where am I really spending my money? And when and why? Do I spend more at the weekend? Do I spend more when it's cold? Do I spend more when it's hot? Do I spend more when it's that time of the month? Where are the times when we're really spending? Because if you just call up a budget spreadsheet and go through it, and it'll say, how much do you spend on clothes? How much do you spend on this? How much do you spend on that? You'll put in the things that you think you spend.
Yes.
Or in an ideal world, you'd have that much. And that tells you, great, you've got this much to put into these pots, and you'll have this much left at the end, which you can save. And the reality is 9 times out of 10 that you're nowhere near. And so again, what do? You go, oh, well, I'm just no good with money. I'm just no good at it.
Yes, I can relate to
It's
that.
going back to exactly what are you doing with that money? And then knowing that, then you can say, okay, now I know what I need to work on. So those are the type of workshops that we do when we're delivering the financial well-being. Is like the thought processes behind your spending habits, and everybody will be different because everybody's got different priorities.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So we've done the work. We've kept a record of our spending. We've figured out where it's all going. We've realised we've got an extra 40 quid spare a month. What should we do with that 40 quid to make it work for us?
Oh, well, if you've got high interest debt, then you may want to pay some extra off that credit card. I would always say, don't pay it all off the credit card unless it's, unless you're behind and it's a real priority. Because again, if we're only thinking we can't do anything else because I've got this credit card, then that makes us feel that we're lacking. So it's like extra money is there. I've got to pay it off my credit card. I can't do anything else until. So maybe pay a third of it off your credit card. Then maybe put a little bit into your cash savings to start building that emergency fund so that you don't have to need your credit card again in the future. So there's no point in paying off your credit card if then you're spending back on it every month.
Yeah.
So put a little bit off your credit card and a little bit into savings, and then a little bit into your investment, whether that's your pension. People think that they're not investors, but if you've got a pension, you're already investing. You just don't realize it. So maybe you want to add a bit to a pension, or maybe you want to consider whether it's right for you to start an investment plan. You can do that from literally just a few pounds each month, in whether it's in an ISA or a general account, or you're doing it for your children, or any number of things. You no longer have to have tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds before you can become an investor. Chances are you already are one, but you can now think about your short term, your medium term, and your long term goals, and start putting that money towards them. It's a whole lot more fun putting money away and seeing it grow so that you can have that trip to Bali or whatever in the future, than it is to be sitting there at the end of the month going, well, that didn't work again.
One shift I made, Kim, a few years ago, and I'm embarrassed actually to say that I was quite old before I realised that this was a sensible thing to do. Rather than how I used to work was I'd get my pay at the beginning of the month, and then I'd do what I needed to do in the month, and then if I had anything left over at the end of the month, I'd think, where I'll put some into savings, and invariably, of course, I was living to whatever was in there. Now I have a few things that just automatically on the first of the month. I'm not salaried anymore, so it's not quite the first of the month. It's when invoices get paid, or when I take my pay out the business, I suppose. Go They just go automatically into savings. I probably need a little bit more advice on the best places to invest, but it's gone. I never see it. So I don't even think about it. It doesn't factor into the amount that I've got for the month now. It's gone and I don't see it. And I can't believe it took me, well, probably 50 years of life to make that distinction and switch things around. And I think in the past it was always, oh, I daren't put it away because I might need it. But actually
Mhm.
the mindset shift for me was I don't even notice it's not there. It's like when you get a pay rise, isn't it? You 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 grow into what's available for you. But I guess if you got a pay rise that you were managing before the pay rise, just save the pay rise or invest the pay rise because you're already not used to having it. Is that sensible?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, we don't get taught these things. So a typical traditional budget spreadsheet will say what's coming in, what's going out, what's left. And it's with that what's left that you then think, oh, I might save some. So, make it as a non-negotiable. You wouldn't dream of not paying your mobile phone bill or your Sky bill or your Netflix bill or whatever it might be. So why not make a payment into your savings or your investment or your pension a non-negotiable? Obviously, for some pensions, if you're employed, it's going to come straight out of your pay and it's gone. You don't even need to think about it. But if you are either self-employed or you want to make an extra contribution or you just want to put some money into that cash savings account, build that fund for next year's holiday, then make it a bill, make it a non-negotiable, commit to it and have it within that list of things that come out immediately after payday. And then even if it's only a fiver, it's a fiver more than you're likely to put away if you're doing it the other way around. There's an accounting system called Profit First, which is obviously it's tailored for businesses, but it talks about paying yourself first. It's not what comes in less what goes out is what you get. It's what comes in, pay yourself first, and then make your other expenses fit. And then you can look at what's left at the end of it. So we so often, if we're business owners, we so often work really, really, really hard and pay everybody else, but don't have any money ourselves. We might have a fantastic turnover in the business, but we're not really seeing any benefit. Or if we are at work and we get that pay rise, how many people are earning double, 3 times, 10 times now what they were earning 10 years ago, but they're still skint. They're still living payday to payday. 2/3 of people are living payday to payday, whether you are earning £20,000 or £120,000, because we are always growing into our means. The more we have, the more we spend, the more we borrow, the bigger the problem that we might be getting ourselves into. So we have to flip it on its head.
Yeah. Profit First
You're
actually was
not on your own.
Yeah, Profit First was what changed my sort of perception of finances around. So I run my business on a profit first philosophy. So for anybody listening, if you're not sure what we're talking about, Mike Michalowicz wrote a book called Profit First. And it's a principles-based thing, although they're talking predominantly about traditional brick and mortar businesses, really. The philosophy, I think, the basic principles work for personal and business finances across the board. Kim, how can people find out more about how they can work with you? If we can start, I know you work both with businesses and with individuals and with coaches. Let's start with the corporate side. How can businesses work with you if they want to get better at supporting their employees?
Okay, so we can deliver lunch and learns, we can deliver half day, full day, programs to help engage your staff in managing their money better, talking to their families about money, putting together workable spending plans, and generally opening up these conversations. So if you find me on LinkedIn, or follow me on social media, you'll be able to to hear a lot more about the work that I do there. And even just an hour once a quarter makes a huge difference to the way in which people start to change their financial habits. So, and the other thing within corporates is to have somebody who's got their ear to the ground, who knows what to look out for, to listen out for, to spot when people have got that problem that they might be afraid of opening up about. So in the same way as we have, menopause champions, and we have, wellbeing champions and community champions. Now, I run a program for financial champions, so that each workplace can have somebody who just knows what to say, what not to say, how to approach a subject, how to create a culture where it feels safe to talk about money, and to help signpost to the right place before it's too late. So, I work with businesses in a number of ways around that. So yeah, the Financial Wellbeing Academy .co.uk, no, financialwellbeingacademy.com is my website, so you can come and find some more there, or reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. And what about wellness coaches and coaches in general who might be dealing with clients who've got problems? So that was I'm just going to type this in the banner. Financial Academy?
The financialwellbeingacademy.com.
Yeah. So what about coaches?
So if you are, providing a wellbeing program to a corporate, invite me to come along and be part of that, or suggest to the business that you are pitching to, that they include financial wellbeing as part of that. So you can add it to your own zone of genius by bringing me in, or somebody who's got that same approach as I have. If you want to know more about how to incorporate it yourself, then I run a program, a CPD accredited program around financial trauma and money stressors, and they're all the things that we can look for as part of the overall conversation. The difference between genders, cultural expectations, historical mindset matters that we're carrying around with us, that you can then create another layer to your own expertise, and just have your radar open and looking at things in a different way. So either bring me in, or come and find me to ask about that CPD accredited training that can really add another really important level of skill to your own wellbeing offering.
Brilliant.
And if you've got money concerns yourself, don't be afraid to come and speak, because again, we often feel that we can't teach what we don't know. So start with yourself as well.
What's the name of that program?
So it's the Financial Trauma Awareness Program.
And how do people find you? Is it all from the Financial Wellbeing Academy?
So yeah, if you head to the financialwellbeingacademy.com, or if you head to LinkedIn or Instagram and find me on there, in my bio there will always be a link to all of the different things that I offer, including one-to-one coaching, the group programs, the lunch and learns, the various different ways that we can work together depending on what you need. No two financial journeys are exactly the same, so I've got something for everybody, whether it's a one-off 1 hour or 12 months of progressive work.
Brilliant. Well, I know you know your stuff. I've seen you speak. We've known each other online for quite some time, and I know that you are absolutely the expert in your field, Kim. So thank you so much for taking an hour to talk all things finance today. Any last messages or last closing comment that you would like to make before we close this down?
Absolutely. First of all, if you're worried about money, you're not on your own. So there is support out there, and whether that's speaking to your bank, your credit card company, somebody at work, friend, colleague, this is something that we can get you through, but we do need to open up that conversation. So you're definitely not on your own, and you never know who you might help by opening up that conversation. The other thing that I would just like to say is it's never too early to make a start on your money stuff, and it's never too late. So if you are sitting there in your prime of your life, like Bev and I are, and you're thinking, I haven't got a pension, I haven't done any saving, it's too late. It's never too late. Everything that you do is a step in the right direction. So whether that's focusing on what you're spending, putting another £1 a month away in your savings, having a conversation with your other half, it's never ever ever too little too late.
I love it. And I think that's certainly been one of my beliefs. I'm 58. I do have a pension from my long time in the MOD. So there's no time left, but I'm 58. I could have another 30 years of wanting a bit more income. So it makes sense, doesn't it? Never too late. Brilliant. Kim, thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
And to you too. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Take care.